This is Dyke Hendrickson, and I am the host of the podcast Life Along the Merrimack. We talk about the health and history of the Merrimack River and many other things. And today my guest is John Macone of the Merrimack River Watershed Council. John, thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for inviting me, Dyke. Appreciate being here.
Well, you're a veteran of the river, and you're one of the education leaders for the River Watershed Council. Maybe you can just explain a little bit what the Watershed Council does and some of the activities. And of course, in a moment or two, I want to ask you more about the activities, but talk a little about the Watershed Council, if you would.
Sure. Okay. So we're a nonprofit. The council was started back in the 1970s, not long after the Clean Water Act was passed. Dyke, did you know this is the 50th anniversary year of the Clean Water Act?
I did. And then Senator Edmund Muskie from Maine was a leader in that. And so it is a big year, 50 years.
Big deal. Yeah. So it was started then, like a lot of other watershed groups were. And its mission is basically to make the river cleaner and healthier for the next generation. And every few years, that mission, the parameters change. We might be able to tamp down one problem, and then something new will emerge, and we'll have to deal with that. And so it's, this is the kind of thing we're going to have to do for generations, I'm sure, to try to make the river as clean as possible.
Well, one of the challenges of the river, as I understand it, are CSOs, combined sewage overflows, and they are, simply put, when there's the effluent comes into a sewage treatment plant, when rainwater comes into the sewage treatment plant, there's just too much matter there. Can you talk about that? Has that problem been solved, or are you folks and many people still working on it?
Yeah, sure. So that's a problem that's been around actually for in one form or another for almost 200 years. And it is slowly getting tamped down, but it's still a pretty big issue for the Merrimack. Last year we had about 800 million gallons of sewage go into the river during
that is such an awesomely large number. I mean, I don't see that in the media much. Probably most of us, including me, did not know that. But now it does come out with rainwater, and the river is significant in its own, but that is a lot of effluent. The people downriver learn about that when it's been discharged?
Yeah, there are now mechanisms so they can learn about it. The state passed a law about a year ago that required the sewage plants to let people know. And that law is still in the works. There's a deadline of, I think it's July 6th or around there of this year, when all of those systems have to be in place so that somebody could sign up to get a notice and find out what's going on, or the plants also have to send info to local media, put notices on websites, those sorts of things. So that's a good advancement because at least people know there's sewage in the water, but it doesn't actually fix the problem of sewage being in the river.
Now, talking about local media, you were the former editor of the Daily News in Newburyport. And so, is it your sense that the media is covering this situation, or sometimes it seems like it's sporadic, but maybe maybe I'm a little behind. Can we get more information out? And I guess that's one of the things that you're dedicated to doing.
Yeah, well, programs like yours do a great job of telling people about this issue. And yeah, you're right. There are periods when there was a lot of news about it, and then it kind of slinks under the radar. I think in the summertime, people pay more attention because they're out on the river. And, you might have a big rainstorm one day, and the next day, it's a beautiful day and lots of people are out there paddling and swimming, and, there's sewage in the river. And when they find out about that, they get outraged, and you might see more media come out at that point.
Well, one of the benefits of, some of the recent federal appropriations, as I understand it, is infrastructure. And I had heard and been aware that the Watershed Council got about $350,000 federal money as part of that dispersal. Has that money arrived, and what are your plans for using that? Can it go to communities, or can it go to study programs? What are your thoughts about using that?
Yeah, so that's a very specific allocation, and it's not related to fixing CSOs specifically. What it's intended to do is there are a lot of places along the river where sewage and contaminants are leaking into the Merrimack through pipes and illegal hookups, and sort of like a detective, you can find this stuff by doing water testing, and you'll find that there are levels of contaminants that are high in a spot. You can
Mhm.
move your spot and finally pinpoint where it's coming from. So that's what a lot of that funding is going to do. It's going to find these what they call hotspots,
Mhm.
and then help to locate exactly where those pollutants are coming from, and then fix that problem. So then on the other side, there's this issue of, well, how do you fix these CSOs? That's going to cost a lot of money. And so there is federal money available for that. And some of our communities along the river are starting to take advantage of that. That's a big number. That's in the millions, tens of
Mhm.
millions, hundreds actually.
Well, one of the elements of most communities, and that includes Newburyport, and I would mention that the Newburyport sewage treatment plant is not part of this group that has the CSOs. Most of them, as I'm aware, are upriver in Haverhill, Lowell, Lawrence, Manchester, some of those places. And the federal government has put these sewage treatment plants on notice. They have plans in the works to improve. And so I'll just leave it at that. But one other element, John, is, and in Newburyport, right down near the waterfront, near the old Black Cow, there are still pipes that, put rainwater into the river if there's a large rainfall. And again, this is not effluent like CSOs. This is collected along the river, along the streets, High Street and whatever. It runs down to the river. And, it has, gas, oil from cars. It might have a beer can now and then. But I wanted to ask you, is there a way to start focusing on these? Because I think just about every riverside community has these pipes bringing rainwater and surface water into the river.
Yeah. So this is an unfortunate piece of information, but what you're seeing there is actually the solution to this CSO problem. So when the way it's dealt with is typically that the pipes that collect the street drain water would go into the sewer plants. Well,
Mhm.
the way to correct that is to separate them and have those pipes go directly into a water source like the river. So you're right, they pick up all kinds of things that come off of the roadways, all kinds of trash and pollutants, and it goes right into a river. So you're not getting the sewage, but you are getting all that junk that's on a
Mhm.
road. So I've heard scientists look at this and say, 100 years from now, they're going to look at this and say, why did they do that? They should have just treated all of this stuff at much larger sewer plants. But that is the solution that's being pursued now, and that's considered to be the preferred solution.
It is a curious thing that, we all probably see the river at least once a day. We travel over it. Some of us have boats and everything, but we're still wrestling with these significant problems. One is the CSOs, and the other is this surface water going into the river. Now, do you ever go boating yourself, John? Have you gone out on the river very much in recent years?
I have, yes, I have, quite a bit.
And what is your sense? Well, one question I want to ask you is not science related. I've always heard it's tough to get through the channel because we have a tide from the ocean, of course. We have a heavy current from the river. Is it difficult to get in and out of the harbor entrance?
Yeah, well, it can be. If especially if you're not familiar with it, and maybe you don't know how to do it. And I've tried to do it when I didn't know how to do it. Not quite suffer the worst consequences, but it can be scary. Uh, so yes, it can be depending on the tide and the wind and the waves and the sea conditions. It can be very dangerous. But other times it can be smooth as flat as a pancake, and you just have to kind of to pick your day.
Well, over the years, and I'm going back, several hundred years, there have been scores, if not hundreds, of boat disasters right outside the Merrimack, and part of what, particularly in the age of sail, it was difficult to get into the Newburyport Harbor, and there are numerous deaths and disasters out there. The Coast Guard is still active in Newburyport. Are they called out from time to time now to deal with trouble either on the river or near the harbor entrance?
Yeah, I thought I saw something about a month ago where they had a rescue out at the mouth, and yeah, during the summer, I think they're out there a fair amount with people getting into trouble. It's kind of scary because if the tide's going out rapidly, it's like a conveyor belt when you're going out. You go very fast, and there are these set of what they call standing waves right at the end of the jetties, pretty much, and it's like hitting a wall of water. It can be 5 or more feet tall, and almost vertical. So it's scary if you're in a small boat or even in a fairly large one. You hit those things, it can upset your day.
Well, just sitting on the riverbank many times, because I recently wrote a book titled Merrimack, the Resilient River. Sometimes you see groups like there'll be an 18 or 20-foot boat, which is on a small side, and there'd be 8 or 10 people or young people. They're going out. You can see them raising their beer cans, and I'm just thinking, wow, this is a packed boat. You folks are drinking. You're going into something that could be quite hazardous. And I do say every year the Coast Guard reports a number of incidents where, as you say, the waves were tough. Maybe there were too many people in the vessel. I mean, bad things can happen to good people out on the old Merrimack.
You sure can. Yeah. Once things go badly, it's pretty hard to reverse it.
Well, one thing I'm trying to do, I mentioned I wrote this book about the river. I'm giving free books away to different groups, such as your own, the Watershed Council. Perhaps you'll give them away to young people. The Merrimack Nature School, I'm giving some to. Storm Surge, which is a group that studies the river. So my little place in this is trying to help people learn more about the river, particularly youngsters like at the Merrimack Nature School. So they'll be more aware of it, and they'll just know more about the history, and then more about, as you say, what might be done to cut down on CSOs or, cut down on the water going into the river.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. And we intend to give out those books. So thank you so much for doing that.
So the Watershed Council, I'm talking to John Macone, who is Education and Outreach Director for the Merrimack River Watershed Council. I am Dyke Hendrickson. This is the podcast Life Along the Merrimack on 96.3 Joppa Radio, Channel 9, cable TV, and also archived on YouTube. And one of the things about the Watershed Council, John, is particularly in the warmer weather, you have a number of events. Can you talk about some of the things you have coming up? I think you're going to be, and remember, the river is 117 miles long. It goes well into New Hampshire. So a lot of your events are up in New Hampshire. Can you talk a little? I think you have a paddle, a kayak event in late May in New Hampshire. Can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Yes, we do. On the 28th, this coming weekend, we've got a paddling event that's going out of Concord, and I think it's a 3 or 4 hour trip. And we provide the kayaks. We also have a guide. So
are you the guide?
A guide will be there. Yeah.
Are you the guide?
I am not the guide. No. No, you
I
wouldn't
was
want me
just,
to agree to that.
I was just weighing my decision whether to drive up and hop in one of the kayaks or not, but I won't say whether it would have given me more or less confidence to get into the vessel. But
Good
please
to
continue.
know. Good to know. Well, yeah. So we still have plenty of room in for people in this at $50, which is pretty cheap for all of that.
Yeah, because you get the
And,
rental of the canoe.
yeah, and it's
Kayak.
it's such a different river up there than it is here. You know, if people are afraid of kayaking around here, when you're up around Concord, it's a very placid sort of area, beautiful. You know, there's a lot of incredible scenery that you're going to go by, almost like a wilderness in some areas. So you get a really different feel.
I agree, because the river starts in Franklin, New Hampshire, and you know, the first 10 to, I don't know, 40 miles, as you say, it's just, you know, there's a little white water, there's no houses or factories along the way. And you do see, if you came from Newburyport or Lowell or Lawrence, it does look like, you know, just a different river, and it's so pleasant. Yeah. What kind of people sign up for this, John? You know, it's hard to generalize, but, you know, are they veteran kayakers? Are they people just going out, you know, as amateurs? How does it play out in terms of participants?
Yeah, we get a wide variety. We have people who bring their own kayaks, who are veterans and who maybe have never kayaked on that stretch of history. But we do have a lot of people who are new to it, who maybe have never even kayaked before. I'm pretty sure they also have dual kayaks as well. So if it's somebody who's not, you know, comfortable being in a boat by themselves, they can be in it with somebody else. And so it's, you know, we try to make it as accessible to everyone as possible. We're going to be doing other kayak trips further north along the river and further south as well. You know, we'll have some around Newburyport. We'll have some around Nashua, Lowell. Well, actually, we have a interesting event we're going to do. I think it's in July, where we're going to be cleaning up the river in Lowell in kayaks.
Wow.
With UMass Lowell. They have a fantastic kayaking center on the Merrimack there, and you can rent kayaks and go out and explore it. And up there, you're above the dam, so it's almost like a mill pondy kind of a experience when you're kayaking.
Excuse me. Well, you mentioned the 50th anniversary of the Clean Water Act, which is remarkable. But this year, 2022, marks the 200th year of the first mill on the Merrimack. That was in Lowell in 1822. And even though, you know, we're used to seeing the mills at that time, 200 years ago was the first mill. Hydropower was new. The science was quite advanced. In fact, the Merrimack Valley was considered like the Silicon Valley of our day, because hydropower was providing this relatively cheap vehicle for factories. And then the trains were becoming more prevalent. And so the cotton could get up from the south, and then after it's made into cloth, or if they made wool or shoes, they could ship it out again. So it's amazing. On one hand, we have 50 years. On the other hand, we have 200 years. It's a very, very historic area. As you yourself, a history major from Union College, probably know.
I do know a little about it. In fact, thank you. That's a segue to my next couple of things I wanted to mention. One is that on June 3rd, I'll be giving a slideshow presentation at the Custom House Museum for their First Friday event. And it'll be about the Merrimack River, and in particular about Newburyport's contribution to the river, and how it shaped the river. So one thing you just mentioned, Lowell. You know what the city of Lowell is named for? Do you know who?
Not the poet.
No, but that's a relative of his, Francis Cabot Lowell. He's a Newburyporter, and he was this gentleman born in Newburyport. He was in a wealthy shipbuilding family, he went to England. This is right around when England was developing power looms, and he went into a factory and he studied them very closely, and with an eye on, I'm going to bring this idea to America. And that's what he did. He actually stole the idea from the British. They went through his luggage on the way back looking for any documents he had.
Yeah.
They couldn't find anything because he had memorized it all. And he brought it back, and he enlisted this brilliant mechanic from Byfield, or from Newbury, named Paul Moody. And he explained what he saw to Paul Moody, and he created the machinery. And eventually what happened was they settled on Lowell as the location for where they would get enough power to create this structure that Lowell had thought about. You know, he invented this idea too of the industrial city and conceptualized it. He died before Lowell was founded, so they named Lowell for him because he had basically created it. So a Newburyport, you know, a Newburyporter.
Well, that's a great story. And as you'll recall, there were a lot of wealthy and industrious and very successful people in Newburyport. I mean, in the ship of sail, it was one of the busiest shipbuilding communities. Its trade was remarkable. And then, as you say, some people who were natives of Newburyport went on and did things upriver, and, you know, certainly changed the look of the Merrimack River. But on that topic, I think when we talk about New Hampshire and the Amoskeag Falls, I think you have something coming up at Amoskeag Falls as well in June, do you not?
I do, yeah. It's going to be doing a walking tour of basically going up to where the falls are. There's a dam there now. And then through all these streets in Manchester, at the old mill yard. And they look like these wide boulevards now, but 100 years ago or 150 years ago, they were canals. And the amount of engineering that went on there is incredible. You know, how they built a dam on the Merrimack, and then were able to divert water through the city to create one of the largest industrial cities in the country. And that, again, that's related to Newburyport, that some of the same people who founded Lowell founded Manchester. So that's a walking tour. It's pretty easy to walk. It's flat roads.
And
we
it's
have a
June
bunch of
6th,
photos.
you say?
What's that?
That's June 6th?
Yes, June 6th. I believe it's at 1 o'clock. You can sign up through our website, and it's free. Most of our events are free unless it involves a kayak.
It's good you make that distinction. How about, you know, going down the calendar rather than down the river? In June 11th, I think you have an invasive removal of invasive plants, if you will, from Stark Park. So where is Stark Park?
Okay, so Stark Park is in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's right on the river. And, you know, it has the same problem you see all along the Merrimack, which is bittersweet plants are there. And there's some other invasive species too. And they end up choking native trees and native plants. In fact, they kill trees. And that's one of our bigger problems on the Merrimack, is that, you know, trees hold the riverbank in place, and they stop pollution from going into the river. So we want to maintain this buffer of trees. But this is a plant that's killing the trees, causing them to fall into the river in many cases, and creating erosion problems.
Well, it seems like, I mean, it's a noble idea. It seems like it might be a bit cumbersome. How do you go about doing that? Are you in vessels, or are you walking along the riverbank, or how does that happen?
Yeah, it's hard. It's basically you go out there with loppers and with saws, and it's a lot of physical activity because these vines, I'm sure some of your listeners have seen them. They can get up to 3 inches in diameter.
Yeah.
And wind around trees, and they actually kind of bind into the fabric of the tree itself. So you have to cut them off. When they're real small, you can cut them and pull the roots out. But when they're big, if you just cut them and kill them, you're going to be helping.
Well, downriver in the marsh where we are, Amesbury, Newburyport, Salisbury, the marsh itself is under duress, is it not, for invasive species?
That's true. Yeah, that's true with Phragmites in particular. Yeah.
So we have, John and I are generally optimistic people. I mean, we're talking about effluent, we're talking about invasive species, but the Merrimack is a beautiful thing. Just talk a little more. June 12th, you have a river cleanup at UMass Lowell Boathouse. How would people get there? Would you drive up to the boathouse in Lowell?
That's right. Yep. I think I'd mentioned that's July, but you're right. It's in June. So yeah, you drive to this wonderful boathouse, and it's right on the river in Lowell, and they can provide kayaks. You have to sign up beforehand, and that's all day event. I think you can sign up for either morning or afternoon session. And basically, you're kayaking along the edges of the river and picking up trash that people can't get to from the shoreline.
Well, even now, when consciousness is supposedly improving about plastics, I mean, the times I've been on the river, there's still a lot of plastic water bottles out there. And you feel like saying, why do people have to throw these overboard? Can't you just keep them in the vessel till you get back to the shore? But you still see many plastic bottles out there.
Yeah. Plastics are a big problem all along the Merrimack. So, that's something we're working on too. We do a lot of policy work, and one thing we'd like to see is the bottle bill to be expanded to cover water bottles, because when it was first put into place, there were no water bottles, and so it's not included. There's all kinds of other bottles that are also not included. We'd like to see those get included. And often when you look at the river, those are the bottles you see, because there's no, people can't collect them and bring them back. So it'd be kind of a self-policing effort.
And maybe the mindsets of people are improving. I think that was on the ballot here in this state about a decade or so ago, and it did not pass. And I was so surprised, don't we want to get rid of plastic bottles, put 5 cents on them? But of course, eons ago, when they put 5 cents on beer, I mean, there was a big beer cans. There was a big uprising about that. And I thought, geez, but as you say, it got a lot of the beer and soda cans off of the roads and off of the sidewalks. It used to be terrible, but now they're relatively clean of those kind of bottles.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, this is good. We're almost finished, which is too bad because I always learn quite a bit talking to John. I am Dyke Hendrickson. This is the podcast, Life Along the Merrimack, on 96.3 Joppa Radio, Channel 9 local cable TV, and we're we're archived on YouTube. So John, maybe you could just finish with two things. If you could give us the website address of the Watershed Council, and also if you can repeat where you're speaking a week from Friday. You'll be at the Maritime Museum, if I understand it correctly, but maybe you could remark about that.
Sure. Okay. Yes. Thanks, Dyke. Our website is Merrimack with a K at the end.org. You can also find us on Facebook or Twitter if you type in Merrimack River Watershed Council. And the event is, I guess it's a members only event, but you can become a member of the Custom House. And it's from 6 to 8. And I'll be giving a slideshow presentation on the history of the Merrimack. And I'll have a few goodies I haven't mentioned here of for history buffs or things they may not be aware of that might entice people to come.
And let me mention one thing. It might be members only, but they're looking to add members. So if you're interested in the program, which you should be, I've heard John's other programs are very interesting and informative. Go to the museum. It's right on Water Street in the middle of Newburyport. And, just say you're interested in hearing it. You might be interested in being a member and that type of thing. And I think, you'll be able to get good access because they're very informative programs. And I think you might enjoy it. So, John, I want to thank you very much for being on the podcast. And I'll look forward to seeing your presentation in about a week.
Great. Thanks so much, Dyke. Great talking with you.
Okay, well, this is it for the day. Life Along the Merrimack, where we talk about the health and history of the Merrimack River. Thank you for being with us, and we'll talk again next week. Thank you.